This is Obsessed with Assessment podcast. We welcome you into our testing chamber. I'm Sam Deno, the Educational Assessment Lead at Twinkle Educational Publishing, and this is Emma McHale.
Hello, I work at Twinkle with Sam as the manager for STEM, actually. But I feel like I bring the primary eye to this podcast.
You do, yes, because my background's in secondary. When we recorded last time, we briefly mentioned the National Reference Test in England. And in fact, we spoke about it in such an ill-informed way. Do you know what I did? I chopped it out entirely. So
you were like, no, they can't hear that.
Yeah. Nobody needs to know how little we know about the National Reference Test, I thought. So anyway, we've done our homework. And we're going to be diving in and telling you all of the information you need to determine its value to you as an educator or a human being if you're not an educator. It's an intriguing test that raises loads of questions, and all of that is to come. So the National Reference Test could be seen as a stealth assessment. It just goes on quietly in the background. Do you know how stealthy it is?
Well, enough that we didn't know about it.
Enough that we didn't know about it. Also, it doesn't even have its own Wikipedia page.
That is very secret.
Really secret. You go to Wikipedia it's the start of all good research, isn't it?
So we are in no way suggesting that all of Sam's research comes from Wikipedia.
The interesting thing is that 7 years into its formation, so this test began in 2017. It's a mandatory test in England. 7 years in, the data that it produces has been used for very little, except to validate the data that we already get from GCSE results.
Right.
What's the point, you may ask?
So is it purely for GCSE results? We're not using it for anything else?
Well, we're not using it for anything at this point. Well, so one of the problems is a pandemic hit in 2020. So this test was introduced in 2017. Ofqual and the NFER, who they sort of contracted to run the test for them, said the data that we can gather won't really become sort of solid until 2019. And then, of course, so we started collecting data in 2019 that seemed like really robust. And then obviously 2020, 2021 thrown out the window. And then still kind of, any reporting data for this sort of last 5 year period has been a little bit dodgy because of the COVID spikes or dips or whatever. Daisy Christodoulou, do you remember her?
Oh, Daisy again, yeah. Because I remember her surname's very exciting.
Yeah, excellent surname. And she's also a leading voice in educational assessment in England. More importantly, she breezily assesses the impact of the National Reference Test by saying this is the only anecdotal comment I can find about it from somebody who doesn't work for Ofqual or the NFER. She says, "I think it's working pretty well." There's your soundbite.
That's a thorough analysis.
And that's in a recent blog that she did that we talked about in a previous episode. I think it's working pretty well. What then is this ambiguous testing tool that lurks in the shadows? On the website, the NFER tell us that it was introduced to provide additional information to support the awarding of GCSEs. And here's how it's worked. Every year since numbered grades were introduced, which was 2017, a sample of roughly 2%.
That's a small sample, really.
It is quite a small sample of Year 11 pupils have been selected to sit the National Reference Test during February or March of their GCSE year, depending on what the school arranges.
How are they selected? Is it completely random?
300 schools are selected as a representative sample each year. So that's not random.
So like representative of different types of areas and okay.
Types of areas, types of schools as well. And then from each of those schools up to 30 pupils are chosen at random. And roughly about 12 or 13,000 pupils take the test. As
I'd
far
be
as
quite annoyed if been made to do an extra test.
It'd be really annoying, wouldn't it?
I know you've got all this revision to do and all these GCSEs, but you fancy another test? We've just picked you.
Yeah, it's a bit like a jury service. Also, did you see on my notes what they get for doing it?
The school gets like a cash incentive, but it's not loads. It's not a lot, isn't the cash incentive?
It's 190 quid.
Yeah, 190 quid. And the students get a prize draw to win a tablet at the minute.
But I love this detail. The NFER test administrators bring all of the material with them on the day. They run the exam. And then they take it all away again at the end. And it's just like they've come and gone. And it's a bit like a sort of SWAT team sort of sting on the school or something like that. It's sort of...
the assessment SWAT team. Yeah. That makes it feel really secret. Like, I kind of want to be a test administrator now. After reading that, I'd love to be the person that turns up like, no looking in my bag.
So there are two tests. In fact, it wouldn't be true to say there are two tests. There are two subjects that are tested, English language and maths. And actually they have 8 papers. They have 8 papers for each, but pupils don't have to sit 8 papers.
I was genuinely about to be horrified then.
So pupils either sit English or they sit maths, and they have one paper from a collection of 8 papers, which are spread out across that sort of cohort of 6,000 pupils that take each test. Now, the tests track with the existing curriculum that the pupils are being taught. They align with the skills that they're learning for their GCSEs.
Okay, so they're not having something put in front of them that's gonna, but what the heck is this?
No, and in fact, they're encouraged not to, and they probably don't have time to revise. Schools are encouraged not to give them additional sort of intervention sessions or anything.
Because they're not. I suppose they're not being judged on it, are they?
No, exactly, and that's in fact I've not mentioned that, but that's an absolutely crucial thing. School. This is not about school accountability. This is not about
student attainment, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. This is all about national testing and understanding national attainment.
Do you ever get to find out the results if you are a person that sits it? Like, do you ever get to know if you did well or not, or is it just like, you've done that now, thank you, that was your part?
No, you don't get to know your result.
Oh, that'd kill me on the inside.
It lasts an hour. Students sit the test under regular exam conditions. Here's the big twist though that I really like. The questions in the tests hardly change from year to year. So what the NFER is able to track is virtually pure student attainment against never changing criteria.
So that's a really true measure of whether standards are going up or not. Because quite often we do that thing, don't we? Like, oh, more people got A's at A level this year than ever before, and everyone goes, it's because the exam's easier. Or, when students do worse one year, it's like, well, children are getting less bright, which feels a very mean thing to do in either direction. But I understand the need to keep it the same, actually.
But in the case of the National Reference Test, that is something that can be monitored. So 2017 was used as the baseline to establish how many pupils were working at grades 4 and above, 5 and above, and 7 and above. And then since then, that baseline has been used to measure subsequent years against it. So we've got this data. That's exciting. So we've got data now from 2017 up to 2024, which in theory, if you don't worry too much about pandemics.
Yeah, the two missing years.
2 missing years and then all the other ones that got skewed because of it. In theory, will tell us then how well pupils are retaining year on year, whether there is progress, whether there's progress in the way that education is rolled out, whether pupil intelligence is going up and down. That sounds like really valuable data, doesn't it?
So if when you do your GCSEs, the grade boundaries are going to move in line with the marks as they come in, what does this inform?
So grade boundaries do that, but that's still it's still against a system that has those variables of was that a difficult test, was that an easy test, which up until this point we've not known. But what will happen with this data is that Ofqual and the exam boards will sit down before they award English language and maths GCSEs, and they will determine if the results of the national reference test are significant enough to influence the moving of that grade boundary.
So they do feed into moving the boundaries as well. Yeah, that's okay. That's an important detail.
That's the theory.
Yeah, that's what they should be doing.
But up until this point, they haven't done that. So 7 years in, the data's always been rejected as not significant enough. And so no direct action in terms of grade boundary movement has actually taken place as a result of these tests.
Not significant enough in terms of it hasn't swayed in either direction.
In 2019, which we'll consider sort of the first year in which the data was reliable, roughly 66% of students achieved grade 4 or above in English language.
Okay.
So 66%. In 2024, so this year, the year that we're recording this podcast, the figure is 65%.
Okay.
So it's a 1% drop. Over 5 years, a 1% drop with pandemic in the middle, ups and downs and those sorts of things. And then if you look at the grade 7s, so if you get grade 7 and above, that figure has hardly changed at all. In fact, in both years, 2019, 2024, 16.5% of pupils got a grade 7 and above.
Okay.
I think that's encouraging. The education kind of has basically maintained itself.
Yeah.
So that suggests everything is fair. So like a 1% difference in one of those grade boundaries, that is not deemed as significant enough
to need to look at the evidence from the reference test.
Exactly. So they have considered it, but what they've considered is insignificant. So in maths, it's slightly more noticeable. So in maths in 2019, 73% got grade 4s and above, and in 2024, 71%. So it's a 2% drop.
I wonder what the tolerance level is, for when they start looking at the reference test.
I think that might be one of the problems, that nobody has spelt out what the tolerance level is.
Oh, really? That seems like something you do early on.
Unless that is an internal conversation that we're just not privy to. But that's not information that's been shared.
Well, how dare they? We want to know.
Paul Newton, who is a research chair at Ofqual, spoke to the Times Educational Supplement in 2023, and he said this: "The National Reference Test is an antidote to our use of comparable outcomes. Comparable outcomes keeps things stable, but it isn't very good when we want to recognise genuine change in the level of attainment in the cohort."
I really agree with that.
So it's certainly a way we can measure ourselves, even if it's not really being used for anything.
Yeah, the fact that it's not been used still gives you evidence that it doesn't need to be used. The non-use in itself does give you that, that is the action.
Yeah, but it'd be really interesting in the curriculum assessment review, for example, might they recognise the National Reference Test as an opportunity to who knows what?
Yeah, I wonder if it will stay, because it's like you say, it's a shame that I feel like we don't know very much about it. And the fact that it hasn't been applied or needed to be applied, it could be an argument on one hand for just get rid of it, like why are we even doing it? But then, as I say, the fact that it hasn't been used still means that it's still got impacts, hasn't it? Because the impact of you doing it has been, yeah, no, that's fine. Everything looks okay.
Not being used is a good thing, and yet there is an impact on schools.
And it does put an extra pressure on 16-year-olds.
And then what else could the data show us? Does it simply show us pupil intelligence? Does it show us the way that we teach? Actually, if we're saying nothing has changed over 5 years. Should we be teaching better? What do we need to do to push that up?
Yeah, is something being maintained necessarily the best outcome? I like it. I feel like if I was a person that was actually looking into this as, somebody making decisions in assessment, in the DFE or whatever, this to me is just an added measure that can just give, like, it's a almost gives you a bit of confidence. I think, look at this, we can definitely say this regardless of how it's been used.
Yeah,
just
I
a bit.
agree.
It's reassurance. It's a reassurance level, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, I think it is. Well, I feel like this episode has been a bit of a public service announcement, I would say. So I'm not going to offer any key takeaways except to say the National Reference Test is a thing. It could affect any school and any pupil, so keep your eyes open for it. Let us know if you have been the participant of a National Reference Test in any way. We'd love to hear. And any comments are welcome. Like and subscribe to the podcast. And thanks for listening. And we'll see you soon.